because ISIS is so prevalent in
Malcolm, let me cut
southern
in.
France.
Sorry to interrupt you. The French president has just begun his remarks. We'll come back to you, Malcolm. Sorry.
In Nice tonight, a truck has run towards the crowd that was there for the fireworks of the 14th of July celebration with the intention to kill, to crush, and to massacre. We deplore, at the time I am talking, 77 victims, including several children, and about 20 gravely injured, critically injured. This attack, which is obviously a terrorist attack, is once again of an absolute level of violence. And it is clear that we must do everything we can to fight against this scourge of terrorism. The driver of the truck has been shot dead. We don't know at this time if he had accomplices, but we do everything we can to double-check his identity so that we might be able to find out if he was helped. France has been struck on the day of its national holiday, on the 14th of July, symbol of liberty, because human rights are challenged and denied by fanatics, and France is naturally a target. I speak on behalf of our grieved nation, our solidarity for the victims and for the victims' family. All the resources we have are being deployed to help the injured. The Plan Blanc, which activates all the hospitals in the area, has been triggered. After Paris, in January 2015, and then again in November of last year with Saint-Denis. Now it is Nice's turn to be struck, but it is France in its entirety which is targeted by Islamic terrorism. In such circumstances, we must demonstrate that we are very vigilant and that our determination is unshakable. We have taken a number of measures already. Our laws have been considerably strengthened. But we must, since we are during the summertime, we must strengthen again our level of protection. Therefore, I have decided, following the proposition of the Prime Minister and with the relevant members of the Cabinet of the Defense of the Interior, firstly, that we are going to maintain at a high level the Sentinel operation, which allows to have 10,000 military personnel on the territory, in addition to law enforcement forces. I have also decided to call upon the operational reserve. In other words, all of those who at some time or another have been serving in the military or were part of the gendarmerie forces in order to assist and help the police and gendarmes forces. And we will be able to deploy them in all locations where we need them, and in particular in order to strengthen our borders and the checkpoints at our borders. Also, I've decided that the state of emergency that was supposed and scheduled to end on July 26 will be extended by 3 months. A bill will be presented to Parliament by next week. Nothing will shake us and will make us renounce the fight against terrorism. In fact, we are going to strengthen our action in Syria and in Iraq, and we will continue to hit those who are attacking us on our own territory and who will hit us in their own locations. I announced it yesterday morning. A Council of Defense will be organized tomorrow. It will review all the measures that we have already adopted and which I have just announced. That will allow the deployment of all the forces that are needed in all areas and all sites and all cities where we need protection and where we need to be vigilant. With the Prime Minister, I will travel to Nice after that Council for Defense tomorrow to show my support to the elected officials, to the cities, and to help them and to mobilize all the available resources and needed resources. France is deeply, deeply saddened by this new tragedy. It is horrified by what has just happened. Such a monstrosity which is using a truck to deliberately kill dozens and dozens of people who had just come simply to celebrate the 14th of July. France is deeply saddened, but it is also very strong, and it will be always stronger. I can assure you that we'll always be stronger than the fanatics who are trying to attack us and who are attacking us.
And speaking live in Paris, I'm just going to reiterate and summarize some of the main points that he just made. He said, as he speaks, the death toll from tonight's attack in Nice stands at 77 victims, including children, including several children. He described the attack tonight as, quote, obviously a terrorist attack. He said, we must do everything we can to fight this scourge. They said the attacker, they do not yet know at this point if the attacker had accomplices. He also said specifically that a plan has been triggered. It sounds like a national plan triggered, which activates all hospitals in the area. He said all resources are being used to help the injured. We do not have a firm total on the number of people injured tonight, but we know that it is in the dozens. The president tonight describing a lot of people being grievously injured. But again, we do not have exact injury numbers. The prime minister, he said, proposed and he decided on a number of security measures that will happen in France as a result of tonight's attack, not least of which is the extension of the state of emergency that France was put under after the Bataclan attack in November. That state of emergency was due to expire this month. President Hollande just explaining that that state of emergency will now be extended a further 3 months. He also described a military, it didn't sound like a military call-up. I'm going to try to get a little clarification on this from Laura Haim in just a moment. But the president described calling up the operational reserve, essentially people who are members of the military but who are not on active duty, as I understood him. He said that the operational reserve will be called up to assist and bolster the numbers of police forces and specifically at France's borders. So that's an interesting proposal. I'm not exactly sure what the analogy would be for that in terms of U.S. policy. We'll try to get some clarification on that in just a moment. Interestingly, the president also said that there's nothing that could happen that would dissuade France from its counterterrorism mission, and in fact, France will be strengthening and increasing its operations against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. He then said towards the end of his remarks that he would be convening the French Defense Council tomorrow, and then thereafter he would be heading personally to Nice in the aftermath of this attack. Let's bring back into the conversation Laura Haim, White House correspondent for Canal Plus. Laura, thank you again for staying with us. Let me ask you, we were listening to that with English translation. I don't know if you heard it from Francois Hollande directly in French, but did both the translation and my summary there accurately reflect what he said as best as you could tell?
Yes, absolutely, Rachel. You resumed perfectly what he was saying, and I was really impressed by what François Hollande is saying. Basically, France now is completely at war, and we're witnessing tonight a democracy which is going to put troops all over to protect citizens against terrorism, and it's happening in France. And the main point of the presidential speech was the state of emergency, which is going to be extended for more than 3 months. And it was a big thing in France because a lot of people were saying, okay, we're going to have a summer without the state of emergency. But also, he's going, because France doesn't have a national guard, so he's going to ask what we call the gendarme, which is a part of the French military, and usually they're in the towns, they're controlling the people, they're trying sometimes to arrest people, but they're not military training. And he's going to ask the gendarme, which is a special force in terms, again, similar to the National Guards in the United States, to be at the borders, to do checkpoints. And in a way, France is now in the middle of the summer completely militarized to avoid and to prevent another terrorist attack. This is absolutely massive. This is a history which is happening at this moment in front of us.
And so in terms of understanding this for an American audience, the analogy would be the deployment, the calling up and the deployment of the National Guard to not just bolster local policing, but to bolster the borders, and nationwide, the National Guard essentially being called up and put in the streets.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a very difficult concept for an American audience because you have the police in France and you have the military, and you have also what we call the gendarme, which is a part officially of the Ministry of Defense, but it's not the military and it's not also police people. However, they have the power in France to, again, stop you when you're drinking too much, to arrest you if you have a problem with your neighbor. They're part of the villages, they're part of the towns, they know precisely what's happening. So it's a unique French concept which doesn't exist here. But they're really not like military people, they're not like police officers, they're just trying to know what's happening in the cities, but they're able to do some arrests and they're able to prevent something.
In terms of the president's announcement tonight about Iraq and Syria, he said he's going to be convening the Defense Council tomorrow before he himself goes to Nice. He also said we will, at least in the translation, strengthen and increase operations in Iraq and Syria. Is that an announcement that he is making tonight in response to this attack in Nice, or is that something that President Hollande had already been pursuing?
No, he's making an announcement, but we know, for instance, that in Afghanistan and in other parts of the world, like Africa, the French special forces are doing a lot of things to prevent attacks. What is interesting is he didn't go into details in that, but basically he was, again, as you pointed out, saying that they're going to do something where it's happening, meaning Iraq and Syria. What are they going to do? Nobody knows. Are they going to act alone? No. And what is interesting is that, as you may know, there was apparently a summit which was supposed to be in Washington, D.C., mid-July, around July 20, set up by the White House to organize an answer and to try to find a solution to the global threat and to see what's going to happen against ISIS for the democracies. And is it going to happen, this summit? That's going to be something to watch. But basically now there's a need for a coalition, and the French president, in a very subtle way, he's saying, okay, we now have to do something in Iraq and Syria. And again, he didn't want to give too many details. I just would like to add something, Rachel, for your audience. The French president was talking about the number of people who are going to be officially declared dead. It's going to be really horrible because he was talking about 77 dead people, 20 injured critically, meaning some of those people are going to die. So you're talking about almost 90 people who are going to die in these attacks. And also we had an information when he was talking, you had a lot of kids tonight who were injured. 30 kids have been hospitalized and most of the kids are critically injured.
Wow. Terrible news. Laura Haim, White House correspondent with Canal+. Laura, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For context, in the Bataclan attacks and the November Paris attacks, there were 130 dead. Again, tonight, the official death toll that we've got from Nice is 77. As Laura said, a number of people are critically injured beyond that, including many, many kids who are in hospital tonight. Just a terrible and ongoing story tonight in France.